Welcome back to the next part of our life. I went and ate some food, played way too many shitty games of Overwatch, and now I'm back. If my makeup's looking worse for the wear, that's why. I took off my eyelashes and had to touch up my lipstick because I ate, and the lashes were they were starting to come off, so I was just like, I'm not putting on more glue. I'm taking them off. They're not fun. I don't want them. So yeah, let's go shopping. That sounds fun. Come back before it gets dark, alright, sport? The familiar voice drifts across the street and drew your attention away from the snail you'd been watching inch slowly across the pavement. Cove waited in front of his dad, pushing his green hair back off his face where the breeze was blowing it over his glasses. He looked to be paying only a mild amount of attention as he was being handed a few slips of green paper. Reminded you of when you'd first met Mr. Holden, although he's probably not paying Cove to be friends with himself. Cove's dad seemed to feel your gaze somehow, or maybe you made a noise because a second later his eyes were on you. He waved you over with a smile. He looked happy to see you, but still felt a little weird getting caught. You've got to learn to be more sneaky. He brushed your hands together to free them of sand, then jogged over to join the two.
How's it going?
Good to see you again. What excitement are you up to today, Devin? Taking a walk. I found a pretty cool snail across the road. There's lots of snails around here. Mr. Holden grinned at you kindly. After you finished answering the question, Mr. Holden's attention returned to Cove, who was preoccupied with folding the bills he had into a tiny rectangle. Sounds fun. You know, Cove was about to the stores by the beach. Why don't you go with him? He shrugged. Cove was in the process of making a similar motion. You didn't have anything else to do. You hadn't been to the stores in a few days. Maybe there was something new to look at. Maybe. Is that okay? I was going by myself, but I guess it is. You don't have to. Great. I'm sure you guys will have loads of fun. Mr. Holden reached in his pocket and pulled out a leather wallet filled with money. You found it odd since your moms only ever seemed to have cards in theirs. Here. He leaned in to press a crisp 10 to Cove, giving him a whisper. Get something for your friend, too. Sure.
Good.
That's my boy. Cove's dad ruffled his son's hair as he was straightening back up, the bill in his hand still held outwards toward the green-haired boy. Take care. Cove accepted the bill after a second and slipped it into his pocket. Then with one last nod to his dad, he turned and started walking. He followed after him, intrigued at the possibilities this outing might bring. Cove stayed towards the gentle tide creeping up the sand. You fell in place beside him. It was a nice day. The sun was shining. There weren't many clouds in the sky, though the wind coming off the ocean kept it from being too hot. You took a deep breath, enjoying the scent of salt and ocean air. When you looked at Cove, he was dragging his feet through the sand a little, and you slowed down to wait for him. His eyes searched the ground intently. Are you looking for snails? Are you looking for shells? What is it? You didn't feel the need to ask why. Cove startled a little at the sound of your voice and mumbled, sort of. If you see any, you can let me know. You could manage that. You dropped your view to the sand, walking carefully so you didn't step on any. You were good at finding shells. You had a lot of them at home and always found new ones whenever you visited the beach. The comforting sound of waves filled the silence with pleasant white noise, and you played a little game with yourself as you walked along, getting as close to the water as possible without getting wet. It resulted in you having to run up the sand quickly when a wave rushed more than a few times. Although Cove threw a few glances your way, he didn't say a word. I need a new sand pail. Yeah, what happened to your old one? Cove narrowed his eyes, seemingly to think deeply for a second.
Whoa.
It disappeared. What, really? Cove ducked his head down, lacing his fingers behind his back. It didn't seem like he was going to continue, so you nudged his arm. How did that happen? Well, Cove opened his mouth and shut again, considering. I took it to the beach one day. When I got home, it wasn't anywhere. You left it there? Nope, it wasn't at the beach when I went back. Then you lost it. It disappeared. What about you? What do you do out here? I like to build sandcastles. Last summer, Lizzie and I built one that was as tall as me, and sometimes they have a sandcastle building competition down by the boardwalk. Cool. I bet you could win. He smiled at Cove. Maybe the two of you would build one together one day. Once you reached the shopping area, the noise level grew exponentially. No longer just waves and footsteps, but the chatter of people enjoying the lovely summer day, the call of birds trying to find bits of food left behind, and lots of salespeople trying to get attention. You sniffed the air as you walked beside Cove. You could still smell the ocean, but there were other scents now too. Pizza, pretzels, hot donuts. The energy surrounding the area seemed to fill you, and there was a bounce in your step as you began looking at all the familiar sights. There were so many things to do, you didn't know where to begin. You looked at Cove, hoping he was just as excited as you were. Cove was glancing from one side of the street to the other, with a look in his aquamarine eyes that you couldn't quite work out. What's that? Cove pointed toward a large crowd of people gathered near a few tables with a large colorful umbrella blooming in their middles. You couldn't see past the adults who were blocking the way, but you knew there must be something worth seeing. Without another word, the two of you hurried over to see what all the commotion was about. Feast your eyes on the amazing Alexander! The center of the crowd was a man with a tall hat and a funny green coat that had 3 long tails. There was a little table next to him with a cloth hanging over it that read the amazing Alexander in glittery golden script. Why tell people his name if it's already on the sign? Cove hummed with understanding, then turned to walk away just as the amazing Alexander began shuffling a deck of cards. Maybe we could stay and watch? Cove glanced back at the man, then briefly lifted his arms up off his sides for returning them to place. You grinned, waving for him to follow you as you raced back to stand in the crowd. With that, it began. The magic man pulled one card out of the deck, showing it to the curious onlookers. It was a 4 of diamonds. Watch closely. You did, squeezing through a few of the adult onlookers to get a better view. Suddenly, the man snapped his fingers and the card just disappeared. Whoa! The amazing Alexander, who had earned his title, turned his head and looked directly at you. He reached out with a kind smile. What's this behind your ear? This had to be going somewhere, and you need to find out. He smelled like popcorn and candy when he stepped closer. It was great. You felt a tug, and then he pulled the 4 of diamonds out from behind your ear. You knew that it couldn't really have come from your ear, but you still didn't know how he'd done it. There was a light applause from the crowd, and the man gave a deep bow. This is for you. The magician plucked a pair of balloons from a clump of them tied down to his table. Both were in the shape of a dolphin instead of being a normal circle. And one for your friend, too. Thank you for being my assistant. Wow! Now you were really grateful he chose you. After that, he went to see someone else in the crowd. Pick a card, any card. My uncle does this every time he visits, not the balloons, the stuff with the cards. Cove spoke plainly while reaching over to take the dolphin that had been designated for him. You wondered if Cove's whole family was magic. If so, he was lucky. The crowd started to clear some, and you noticed to the side where there was a whole rack of brightly colored kaleidoscopes on display. Oh, these are cool! You shifted your balloon string to your other hand so you could hold it up in front of you. Then you thought of a question in your mind, shaking the ball and hearing some kind of liquid slosh around inside of it. Once you had given it a good shake, you held it upright, waiting for the answer to appear. Concentrate and ask again. You wrinkled your nose and set the magic 8-ball back on the rack. It wasn't the answer you were hoping for. You followed Cove around to the other side of the stall. Are you having fun? Cove didn't answer straight away, and after a few moments, you thought he wasn't going to say anything at all. A little. When Cove moved towards some stalls nearby, you followed beside him. While Cove looked at the sand pails, you were drawn to a table with colorful keychains laid out on it. They were sewn in the shape of sea creatures, and there was a plaque that read handmade standing proudly in front. There were lots of different types. You saw a dolphin, a shark, a crab, a turtle. Picked up a turtle. Your hand stopped on the sleeping turtle, just barely poking its head out of the shell. It had flecks of metallic green on its back that caught the sunlight when you picked it up. You remembered the turtles you had seen in a movie. You'd been mesmerized by the way they gently glided through the water. You were instantly enamored. Checking the price though, your heart fell. $6. You didn't know much about money, but you thought that was a lot to spend on one thing. You rarely had more than $5 bill to your name. Though, that changed the day you met Cove and his dad. You still had the $20 bill Mr. Holden gave you hidden away in your room. It was a grand sum of money, but you couldn't have been something that was at home instead of in your pocket. Maybe you'd have to ask your moms to bring you here one day, now that you knew what you wanted. Is that what you want? Huh? Oh, it's $6. I didn't bring any money. All right. It's fine. Really? Really? Cove took the keychain from your hands, and that was that. He was holding a small yellow bucket for himself, too. My dad told me to. He smiled, pleased to have things worked out. It was nice of Cove's dad to let Cove buy something for you, too. You had to remember to thank him next time you saw him. After Cove paid, the two of you stepped out of the store side by side, your dolphin balloons knocking together and spiraling around in the air. You watched Cove hold up his new pail to his face, examine it thoroughly. Hey, Cove. Yeah? Your dad gives out money a lot, huh? I really like this keychain, never mind. Your dad gives out money a lot. Huh? He gave me $20 to be your friend, you know that? I really like this keychain. Thank you. Cove shrugged, looking at the sea creature with impassive eyes. Cove looked further down the street, where different food carts were lined up. He rested his non-cast arm over his stomach, just as he did yours, let out a light growl. You hadn't eaten since breakfast. After all this wandering around, you were definitely ready for some lunch. Let's get some food. Yeah. You two wandered around a short while, looking at all the delicacies that were available. Everything looked delicious, and as the different smells, both sweet and salty, wafted over you, your stomach growled even louder. After passing up hot dogs, snow cones, ice cream, and pizza, you both agreed on pretzels. Cove got something sweet and cinnamony, and you got a plain one, got one with cheese, got one with sprinkles, got one with chocolate, got the same. Got with cheese. Cheese pretzels are the best. You licked your lips hungrily as the vendor handed your pretzel over, ready to take a big bite. It was covered in gooey melted cheese, just the way you like it. It seemed odd to get dessert pretzel before eating normal food. You found an empty table close enough to the beach that the grit of the sand made terrible noise when you dragged the chairs out to sit down. These balloons are going to make it hard to eat. Cove placed his bucket on the table as he stared at his still balled up hand that was wrapped around the string. You opened your mouth to agree before an idea hit you. I know. After carefully placing your pretzel somewhere it wouldn't get sandy, you tugged the balloon dolphin out of Cove's hand and tied it in a delicate bow around his wrist. Oh. Cove bounced his arm up and down in place, testing the stability of your knot. After watching his balloon jostle around but remain attached, he seemed satisfied. Can you do it for me? You repeated the ritual. Cove struggled somewhat with the cast, restricting his fingers on one hand and a string already tangled around the other. Got it. Two of you spent a moment admiring your handiwork, both hands now free to allow easy munching on your pretzels. You bit into the doughy treat, savoring the taste on your tongue with a smile as you looked over at the ocean. After a time you finished your pretzel, you were done before Cove. It was boring not having anything to do. You pulled on the string of your balloon to bring it down to your level, and then you held the dolphin in your hands, manipulating it to make it look like it was jumping through the air. If you turned to face towards the beach, it almost looked like it was swimming in the waves like a real dolphin. A laugh came from your side. When you glanced back at Cove, he had left the remaining part of his pretzel on the wrapper and he was gripping his dolphin too. Mine's name is Merryweather. He's the prince of dolphins. My name's Splash. They star in movies. My name is Cherry. She's actually an alien. My name is Sam. They're just a regular dolphin. Their trainers use fish and treats to help them perform tricks. They're most famous dolphin in the world. He sighed, wishing you could star in a movie with a real-life dolphin. What's yours? Cove considered this question, placing the balloon against the table and resting his free arm across it in contemplation. It's... Flab pop! The dolphin exploded into ribbons. Oh no! For a second, all Cove did was gape in shock like you. Then his cheeks puffed up, squinting his eyes. You saw tears start to glisten. You could have my balloon instead if you want it. Cove looked over at you, frowning. I don't want yours. Oh. You felt bad for Cove, but you were secretly glad. You really liked the little dolphin and weren't too eager to give it up. Cove spent the rest of the outing sniffing and didn't say much else. The passing of Cove's balloon was the last major event of your adventure. In the end, two of you headed back late that afternoon. You separated on the beach while Cove went straight home with his brand new sandpail in hand. You decided to sit for a while. You watched the waves and the sunset, fiddling with your new keychain. Another summer day was drawing to a close. It had been nice for the most part. Hopefully there wouldn't be any tears next time. I really, really, really want to go on to step 2. But we'll do at least one more from this. I'll on my own time, when I'm not recording a video, I will, like, play the hell out of this game, because it seems so well done. I am, like, absolutely in awe, at least on my first playthrough. Maybe I'll have a different opinion on my second, but so far, I am just in awe of, like, the detail that has gone into this game. GB Patch has done an excellent job. Alright kids, we're done with dinner, come to the table. Your stomach grumbled right on time. As if it heard your mom's words, you halted your game and looked over. Mom was almost done setting the table. She was walking around the mahogany wood in process of putting down cutlery. Mommy was still in the kitchen, humming under her breath as she turned off the stove and put empty pots in the sink to wash. From beside you, Lizzie stirred, uncrossing her legs and standing up. She stretched her arms above her head. Finally, I'm ready to eat. Then she cast a shy glance in your direction. You recognized that look. Last one to the table is a rotten egg. I haven't, but it was too late. Lizzie had already bolted towards the kitchen. You tried to catch up to her. You stayed sitting. You yelled out to her. You threw a cushion at her. You couldn't let her win without a fight. You planted a hand against the ground and stood up, then you ran after her, although there really wasn't time to close the gap. It was a short distance to the kitchen table. Lizzie managed to get there easily enough, slapping a hand over the wood. Mom moved just before Lizzie could bump into her. With an exasperated sigh, she resumed her work. I win again! You didn't win because you were racing by yourself, because you cheated. Okay, you won. You didn't bother trying to talk to her about that. I won, that means you're the rotten egg. Lizzie grinned, her hands on her hips, then looked over your shoulder. Cove, you think so too, right? You blinked, you'd almost forgotten about him. The fact that Cove preferred to keep to himself didn't help matters either. You spotted Cove still on the floor, his legs crossed beneath him, the arm with the cast resting in his lap. He looked at the two of you with a slight frown. It felt sort of strange to see him still here so late. Tonight Cove had come to your house for a sleepover. Your moms and his dad had planned it a few days ago. You weren't surprised. You'd overheard your moms discussing it before. You hadn't expected it when your moms told you, but you didn't mind Cove sleeping over. The idea made you uncomfortable. He was going to sleep in your room. You'd rather have your room to yourself, but you were resigned to your fate. There wasn't anything you could do. Cove pursed his lips at Lizzie's questions, but he didn't respond. Maybe he was planning on ignoring her, not that Lizzie would make it easy. Well, did I win or what? Cove still didn't respond. He turned away, refusing to weigh in. Lizzie glowered, but it had no effect. Fine, you don't have to say so. You can both be rotten eggs. That's enough. Nobody here's a loser or a rotten egg. You're each farm fresh. Which is a sentence I'd never thought I'd say.
All right.
Now, listen to Mom and come sit at the table for dinner. All three of you. You and Lizzie obeyed, sitting across from each other at the edge of the table. Lizzie blew a raspberry at you when Mom turned her back. Your parents brought the last of the food, then they took seats further down the table instead of sitting right next to you and Lizzie. Only Cove was left out. He had stood up from his spot on the floor, but he hadn't made a move towards the kitchen. Cove, you can sit too. Slowly he eyed the 4 seats that were left. Thanks to the new seating arrangement your parents chose. 1 free chair was beside you, another next to Lizzie, and the last 2 were on the other side where your moms were sitting. He hung his head and scuttled past you, Lizzie, and your moms. He went to the chair on the opposite edge of the table and sat down. It seemed being far away is what he wanted. Your moms frowned. He shrugged it off and turned back to your plate. Now that everyone was situated, Mommy began to pass out plates.
Okay.
Dig in, kids. I cooked a little bit of everything for dinner tonight. You be sure not to avoid all of the veggies. Yes, Mom. Each person at the table served themselves except for Cove. Cove hesitated again. He fidgeted with his hands clamped on the top of his knees. He didn't seem very comfortable doing stuff in someone else's house. One dish seemed to have his eye, at least. That's pineapple chicken. Want to try some? Not really, sorry. But then your moms had noted that Cove saw nothing on his plate as well. Do you not like any of the food, honey?
Well,
Maybe he hasn't tried Hawaiian food before. He hasn't? Wow. Please don't talk with your mouth full, Lizzie. Lizzie swallowed the bite she was eating, then she spoke again. He should try it now. She turned to Cove dramatically. Unless you want to shrink, that's what happens if you miss a meal. Elizabeth, that's not true, you know that. Cove squirmed under all the attention. He fidgeted with a fork between his fingers. I've had some things, just not any of this. Oh, shoot. I knew I should have asked your dad what your favorite foods were. It's all right, Lonnie. Maybe he'll find a new favorite today. You weren't so sure about that. Cove didn't look like he was going to be trying the food anytime soon. I think you'd like the pineapple chicken. It's yummy. Eventually, Cove carefully spooned the rice and pineapple onto his plate, maybe because he didn't know what else to do at that point. You saw he avoided the veggies entirely. Your moms let him get away with not taking any vegetables. At first, Cove poked at the food. Clearly, he was apprehensive to eat something new, but he took a few exploratory bites. It's good, isn't it? You don't have to keep asking. He still speared more meat with his fork and ate it, chewed thoughtfully. It's not bad. Mommy grinned at his words, satisfied, even though it wasn't exactly a glowing commendation. Lizzie wasn't as mollified. You're so weird. Don't be mean to your friend. We're not friends. Oh. Mommy floundered in the face of Cove's blunt honesty. It seemed strange your mommy was taken aback by the news. When had they gotten along? You didn't consider yourself to be friends with him either. You hadn't gotten used... You'd gotten used to seeing him around a lot over the summer, but the two of you hadn't struck anything that could count as a friendship. I don't agree with that, but sure. Your mommy looked at Mom and only... Hi, Rose. What you doing up here? Where you going? Your mommy looked at Mom and only got a shrug. Elizabeth, don't call someone weird. There's no such thing as a weird person and a non-weird person. There's just different perspectives. It's not a nice thing to say to someone, anyone. But Pam, Mommy tried to whisper exclusively to Mom. Her attempt to make it audible at the sounds of clinking silverware meant you caught the quiet words anyway. They're not friends, he said so. As parents, we can only try and sometimes we fail. Not all kids will be thick as thieves. Now less talking and more eating, kids. You need to clean up and start winding down for bed soon. But, Mom... No buts. We've talked about this. Your bedtime will move back in a few years. For now, you don't get to stay up late. Lizzie sulked, muttering under her breath about how it wasn't right. Laughed at Mom's phrasing. You groaned about it as well. You stayed quiet and finished your meal. It was good food, and you were pretty content to just keep eating. That's the idea. Good job, Devin. Everyone else get to it. The rest of dinner passed, but uneventfully. Cove was silent for most of it, even when your moms attempted to include him in conversation. All too soon, the table was cleared, the games in the living room were put away, and you were all steered to your bedrooms. Mom finished tucking you in and kissed your brow just as Mommy poked her head in the room. All ready for lights off, you two? You were lying comfortably on your bed, blanket hiked up under your armpits. You could kick it off later if you get too hot. Mom had set up a sleeping bag on the floor for Cove just beside your bed. He had already wiggled inside. You nodded for the both of you in response to Mommy's question. Perfect. I'll go say goodnight to Lizzie then. Mom tweaked your nose, chuckled when you squawked in annoyance, and left. Mommy took her place sitting on the edge of your bed.
Sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams, sweetie. She pressed a soft kiss on your forehead. You giggled as strands of her hair fell forward and tickled you. Mommy smiled down affectionately at you, then moved her attention to Cove, who watched from his spot on the floor. Do you need anything else before falling asleep, honey? What does your dad do? Sometimes he picks me up and lifts me really high, and then he shakes his hands like he's gonna let go, but then he catches me again. He keeps doing that until sometimes he does drop me on my bed, or other times he lowers me down and we pretend like I'm crashing. Cove had become pretty excited when talking about his nightly ritual with his dad. He seemed to realize how animated he was and bashfully quieted, but I don't want to do that here. Aw, how fun. Though I think you're right, that might not be a good idea to do that tonight. The sleeping bag might not be soft enough for landing. If there's anything else, you can always ask me or Devon's other mom, but I'm the nicer one. Just don't tell her that. She laughed good-naturedly and stood up. Sleep well, Cove. Night. Leaning up against the door jamb, she rested a hand on the light switch and looked at you. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. With a last smile, Mommy turned off the lights and stepped outside, closing the bedroom door behind her. You listened to her footsteps fade as she walked down the hallway. You closed your eyes and snuggled in, prepared to drift off. You started when Cove sighed deeply. You turned your head to look in his direction. In the dark, you could see only the faint outline of a lump under the covers. Cove? Stop that. Could you be quieter, please? Could you be less loud? You can really make your character be an asshole. Huh? Like, for real? What was that? Nothing. I can't sleep. Why not? He shifted, or at least you thought he did. You couldn't see anything, since your eyes were still adjusting to the dark, but you heard a sleeping bag rustle. I want to be in my bed. I was 100% the kid that could not sleep at sleepovers. I would go to a sleepover, and unless, like, I don't know, like my cousin's house I could sleep at, otherwise every other place I would go, I would stay up all night. I just didn't sleep effectively. Maybe I get an hour of sleep, but usually 90% of the time, I just stayed up the whole fucking night. Everyone else would be asleep, and I was that kid that was sitting there on my phone because I can't fucking sleep at other people's houses. About 6 or 7 a.m., I'd start looking at the other kids like, y'all gonna fucking wake up soon? Then you'd hear their parents get up, and they'd be like, oh, Devon, you're awake. And I'm like, yup, I definitely slept tonight, I promise. I want to be in my bed. Oh. Cove sat up. Your eyes had gotten used to the low light level, so you could see him better. You got out of the sleeping bag, wobbled towards your side table, and pulled open the top drawer. What is it? I'm getting my glasses. He sat up too, watching as he reached inside. He paused for a second, then pulled his hand out. Instead of his glasses, he was holding a book. Cove turned it around in his hands, trying to figure out the proper orientation for it. You knew, even without reading the title, which one it was. That was the one your moms would read to you. It was special. Be careful, that's mine. I thought you were looking for your glasses. I was, and I felt this. It looks cool. The compliment he afforded your special book had you grinning. You're confusing forgotten. It's really cool. Oh yeah? What's it about? It's a story where a squire who wants to become a knight and there's magic. Does it have mermaids? No, but... the main character, because the squire's really brave and funny, has cool pictures, something you take up the whole page. Mommy reads it to me, she uses different voices for every character. There's a dragon in it, and crazy things happen. The squire tries to kill her because the king wants the dragon dead, so they have this fight. But the squire finds out the dragon's really nice. They decide they don't want to fight her after all, so the two of them become friends instead. Usually, Cove sported a disinterested expression on his face, or a sad one. You could probably count the number of times you seen him smile in one hand. Right now, though, he looked excited as he flipped the book over and focused on the backside, trying to learn more. You were reminded of the hours you'd spent hearing the tales. No matter how many times you read it or had it read to you, you were still entertained by the story and pictures inside. You glanced out the window. The moon was high in the sky. It was definitely the time you were supposed to be asleep. You couldn't keep staying up. You wanted to read the book with Cove. You climbed out of bed and padded over to your side table. You opened it, rummaged around, pushing aside toys and crayons. Cove called out to you in a confused whisper. What are you doing? You'll see. You let out a cry of victory when you found what you were looking for. You jumped back onto the bed before any hidden boogeyman could catch you unaware. Cove continued to watch as you wiggled away beneath the blanket you discarded earlier, pulled it up over your head. What? Come on, check it out. Bring the book too. After a minute, the bed dipped as Cove got in on it. Then the blanket shifted. You fiddled with the flashlight in your grip, feeling for the switch. God, you probably just blinded this kid. A small click, the space flooded with a bright light. Cove sputtered, putting a hand up to shield himself from the beam. Move it somewhere else. Sorry. You tilted the flashlight so it was shining down towards the floor of your blanket cave, away from Cove's sensitive eyes. Is that better? Yeah. Now we can read, and my moms won't know. I do this all the time. When Mom and Mommy check on me, I have to hide everything under the blanket, but I haven't been caught before. Do you want to try? Cave nodded, pleased by his straightforward response. He placed the book between you and flipped it open to the first page. Meanwhile, he laid down his belly and shuffled closer, picking up the flashlight to shine it on the pages. His face was illuminated with a warm glow. You mirrored his position, leaning in so you could see the book better. Your foreheads nearly brushed until you shuffled back a comfortable distance. You wanted the story to be narrated. You thought it was best to take turns reading the book silently. You flipped through the pages to show Cove cool pictures. You loved what Mommy read to you. Why not read it as loud as you dared this time of night? You didn't even need to study the page for long. There was once a squire who dreamed of knighthood. All they wanted was to do good. Cove was taken aback when you began to recite the words by heart. You even pronounced knighthood properly, a word which had given you grief in the past. His reaction encouraged you to keep going. Soon you got an exciting part, the squire and the dragon's first meeting. The squire walked up to the fearsome dragon, their borrowed sword in one hand and a torch in the other. Her red scales danced in the light like flickering flames. Could you say the dragon's lines? Do you need to get your glasses? No, it's my head hurts if I don't wear my glasses for a while, but I can kind of see things alright. But I don't know any voices. That's okay, it's fun anyway. You hoped you would agree, but Cove vehemently shook his head. It looked like it was just up to you. You continued the dramatic reading, reciting the lines for all the characters. Next time you looked up from your page, your eyes landed right on Cove. His eyes were following the text, a soft smile lighting up his features. The lock of his hair fell into his field of vision, but he gave it no notice. He was lost in the story. Your eyelids started to droop. When your eyes opened again, your bedroom was pitch black and silent. Your head was smushed in your pillow, your pajamas were sticking to you, and your mouth was dry. Slowly you raised onto your elbows. You yawned, the back of your throat twinging as you did so. You rolled onto your side to sit up in bed, planning to get water from the kitchen, when you saw a dark shape towering above you. You froze. Then you remembered you weren't alone in your room tonight. Cove, that you? Yeah. You shifted and felt something cylindrical press against your thigh. You fumbled for it. A familiar weighted flashlight pressed into your palm. You turned it on. Cove blinked at you, looking exhausted. He was in his normal clothes again, shoes and everything. His pajama pants were left on the floor abandoned. His sleeping bag was in a similar state. What is it? I can't sleep. I keep waking up. Did you have a bad dream? He shook his head from side to side. No, just can't sleep. It's weird here. You frowned. You'd helped your mom's redecorate it only a few months back. I like my room. It's weird to me. I want to sleep in my bed. I'm gonna go. What? That shook off the last of your doziness. He was going to walk back outside to his own house, this time of night all by himself. He noted your shocked expression and looked at you with resolve. My dad'll let me in. I've gone outside late before, and I have to go. I can do it by myself. His tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. Not there was time for any. He began making his way to the bedroom door before you could open your mouth to respond. Clearly he was in a hurry to get out of here. You couldn't blame him. It was late and you must want to sleep already. Good night. Night. Just like that, he was gone. You were left blinking wearily at the closed door. You dropped your head to the pillow, closed your eyes, and settled in the best you could. You were getting sleepy again. Your very last thought was that the sleepover had not been very successful. The next morning, you were woken by the sound of Mom's voice and a soft shake on your shoulder. Devin, wake up. It's time to get 'em. Sun was peeking through your curtains and you rubbed your eyes as they adjusted the new light. Cove was already out of bed. She blinked at her for a moment, confused, until you caught the empty sleeping bag on the ground and remembered what happened during the night. But I didn't see him out there. I wonder why he's gotten off so early. You hesitated, giving Mom a look with your mouth hanging half open as your mind processed what to tell her.
Okay?
Devin, is everything alright? Cove couldn't sleep. He said my room was weird. What? Where's Cove now? Did he sleep on the couch? Mom was still looking at you expectantly, but she started to explain what happened when interrupted by Mommy calling from downstairs saying Mr. Holden was at the door. You could tell by the way Mom's forehead crinkled that she was even more concerned. When she turned the head downstairs, she pulled back the covers and jumped out of bed to follow her. Cliff, how are you? Mom joined Mommy at the door while you hovered at the bottom of the stairs and peeked around the corner. You saw Cove's dad standing out just outside. He was alone. You wondered if Cove had gotten home. Mother, loop what happened, but Cove showed back up at home in the middle of the night. Mr. Holden was much more serious than you were used to. Maybe this was a bigger thing than you thought it was. Mom's exchanged a matching pair of surprised looks, Mommy gasping, covering her mouth with a hand. You wouldn't tell me. I thought you might have some insight. We didn't hear a thing during the night. No, Cove was just gone minutes before you arrived. Is he all right? We're so sorry. Mr. Holden pulled his lips into a tight smile and held up his hands as if to say it wasn't their fault. He's fine. I just wanted you to find out more before having another talk with him. He's fine. I just wanted to find out more before having another talk with him. I should have known he wasn't ready to spend the night at someone else's house. You felt bad for Mr. Holden. He looked so sad. They discussed the event for a little bit longer, your parents promising to call them if they found out more. Mr. Holden finally said goodbye. You heard Mom calling your name. Immediately you panicked, wondering if you should find somewhere to hide. There was a growing sense of dread in your stomach that you were about to get into a lot of trouble. Your moms found you eventually, though they were relieved to see they didn't look very angry. They did, however, look very, very worried. Did you know Cove had gone home, Devin? You looked up at them both. Your mouth pulled into a hard line, and Mommy's eyes softened a little. Maybe he snuck out while Devin was asleep. He got past the two of us. Is that what happened, honey? Shaking your head, you finally confessed and told them what had really happened. You didn't want Cove to get into any trouble, but you didn't want to lie to your parents either. Now, when they had been so worried about him, your parents listened to you in full before they explained how dangerous it is for Cove to wander at night on his own. Personally, you didn't think it was that bad, since Cove only lived across the road, but you didn't tell your moms that. You were already in trouble as it was, so when they asked you to promise to tell them something like that next time, you nodded your head in agreement. Even though it was a little unfair, you accepted the punishment that you weren't allowed to have any sleepovers until you could prove to your moms that you were responsible enough. You were determined to show them that you could be trusted. When you saw Cove next, he was sorry he had gotten in trouble. After hearing a similar lecture, Cove got away with a warning from his dad. Mr. Holden felt the negative experience was enough already and Cove didn't need additional punishments. In the end, the two of you and your parents were eventually able to move past the ill-fated sleepover. It had all been a learning experience according to the adults. You could accept that. There were definitely things you learned from it. Okay, I'm gonna save, because I might come back to this at some point. And then, summer ended. If I was playing this on my own, I would do every single scenario, but I just don't feel like there's that kind of time. I'll never get tired of that view. You stood beside your moms and Lizzie as the four of you watched the sun dip into the ocean somewhere far, far away. You like to imagine it cooling off in the water, resting itself before getting ready to shine brightly again tomorrow. That was a fun day. I didn't know they have magicians on the shopping street now. Neither did I. Oh no, we were so dull. Let's get out more. He didn't do real magic, Mom. How did you figure that one out? Because I know that's not what real magic looks like. Oh, Lizzie dear, there's all kinds of magic in this world. Lizzie gave Mommy a suspicious look, but didn't dispute the claim. Well, we can't sit out here all night. Time to hurry home and get cooking. Who's helping with dinner? Lizzie immediately let out a groan. Mom, summer's almost over. The protest was obvious. You could practically see school on the horizon. You certainly didn't want to spend your last bits of freedom cooking dinner. You could do that any other day. Will you please play for a little longer? We have to keep playing before it's too late. It is almost over. Put on your best puppy dog eyes. Lizzie may not want to, but you plan on going home. Oh, don't look at me like that. Like what? Soon we'll have homework and reading to do. We can't do work now. Lizzie made her case and then stomped her foot on the ground. You mimicked her, feeling that it would add something to the argument. Well, come on, Pam. I can help you with dinner. Mommy leaned in for a hug. You knew that you were very close to victory. All right. As soon as dinner's ready, you lot are coming inside. Understood? Yes. Yes, Mom. So much to do, so little time. Maybe I could still get the seashell bracelet at Tines and Trinkets, or maybe the playground, or the fireflies are probably coming out, right? We can't go too far. Lizzie pouted as she pointed this out. Mom said be back in time for dinner. It won't take that long. I know, Devin. A strong gust of wind made you shiver. Lizzie huffed as she wrapped her arms around herself. Doesn't the wind know that summer's not over yet? It's all Lizzie said before abruptly turning on her heel and heading off the direction your mothers had gone. Where are you going? I'm going to my room. I have lots of plans if I want to make the most of tomorrow. You thought this over, looking off towards the water again. Lizzie didn't wait, and before long she disappeared down the road. You watched Lizzie run off, twisting your lips as you considered what to do. In the end, the pretty sky and soothing sound of the waves won out. You strayed off the path, grinning at the feel of the sand, quickly filling the empty space in your flip-flops. That was fun for a while, but you grew bored eventually. How else could you enjoy the remainder of your time at the beach? Look for seashells by the seashore. You walked to the shoreline, peering at any debris that washed up. Most of it was just seaweed, rocks, and trash, though now and then you'd spot a seashell. You picked up ones that stood out to you until you had a nice little collection. It was a great evening, but soon enough you had your fill and were ready to join the rest of your family back home. Not too much farther down, you spot a familiar green head of hair moseying along the shore. You kept going. You want to see what Cove was up to. Curious, you strayed off your path and walked over to him. Cove knelt down, picking up something you quickly identified as a smooth rock. He reared his arm back and tossed it out into the water. You were impressed to see how far he got it to go. It sailed way out into the sea. It was a good toss. That was pretty neat. It wasn't a long throw, but he didn't care to try for that. The rock sunk kind of like a rock and fell back down. I like that I can decide how well Cove threw the rock. I looked for my own rock. Decided to join Cove. Searched nearby for any rocks or shells that you could throw too. Cove jumped a little when he noticed you, and you gave a shrug and smiled, realized that you sort of forgotten to announce yourself. You found a shell that would suit your purposes, a smile growing just as hard as you could. It landed with a wet-sounding thunk a few feet away and slipped down into the water. When you looked over Cove, you didn't seem to notice that his throw had been more impressive. Cove was looking down at his cast, scratching idly at the pink surface, even though you were pretty sure he couldn't feel it. His brow furrowed, and there was a frown on his face. It's not fair. It's not fair. I've had to wear this cast for ages. I can't even swim. When do you get it off? Cove shrugged and didn't say anything. For a second, he thought maybe he didn't know, but finally he sighed. A few weeks. You didn't think a few weeks was that bad. His cast would be off for most of his time at school. He'd be able to play normally at recess. He could sometimes go swimming during the school year, so maybe he could make up for the last time then. Cove let out a huff, flopping down on the sand. I can't believe summer's almost over. You sat down next to him and nodded in agreement, regardless of the sudden topic change. I don't want to go to school. I mean, I would. I don't want to go to a new school. I think it'll be the same school you and Lizzie. My dad said something about that. So why don't you want to go? It's nice as far as schools go. You've only ever been to the one school, but you were sure that his old school couldn't have been that much better. Then again, he did have to make new friends and meet new teachers. It could be kind of scary. Cove shook his head, then wrapped his good arm around his knees as he drew them to his chest. You heard a sniffling sound, and when you took a good look at his face, you realized how his eyes were wet. I want to go home. I want to go home. You weren't sure what to do. It felt weird to just leave him here crying, but what could you say that would help? He frowned a little, starting to stand. Okay, well, bye then. Cove gave his head a small shake. No, I want to go back home. Right, Cove wanted to go back to his old home, the one that sat waiting someplace far from here, the one that he'd bring up whenever he felt sad. It had been a while since he moved in, but he didn't seem to feel any better about being here. He settled back down into the sand, trying to consider what to do. Do you hate it here? Cove's brow furrowed even more. Then he shook his head. Furrowed. You're not gonna leave. You're not gonna leave, right? You'll still be around? The question was a little surprising. Of course. Your parents would have mentioned if you were going to move or something, right? After a second, Cove gave a little nod. Once I get my cast off, we could go swimming. You were fine with him changing the subject again. Yeah, that would be fun. Cove smiled and looked back at the waves. My dad keeps saying that I'll get used to everything eventually, that I'd feel better then. It used to make me angry. You spared a glance over at Cove and see the anger had slipped off his face in favor of something almost puzzled. But maybe that would be okay after all, as long as I really do feel better. I can't see it. The two of you sat quietly, just taking in the sounds of the waves. Lost in thought, you started a bit when you heard a faint, familiar sound. The sound of your mom shouting your name. You looked over your shoulder, realizing it was probably time for dinner. Had you guys really been sitting out here that long? You stood and dusted sand off yourself. My mom's calling. It's time for dinner. You should come. Cove looked up at you, expression seeming reluctance, yet ultimately, okay. When you smiled, Cove returned with one of his own. The two of you couldn't stay there in your own little world any longer. You were being called forward. So the both of you ran off towards your house, leaving the waves and summer behind. Aww. August ended, September began. It was time to go back to school. Lizzie groaned and complained the entire first week. She hated going to classes. Still, there was interesting things to do that couldn't be done anywhere else. You weren't sure how Cove felt about it. He was enrolled that year. That was like a sign Cove would be staying in Sunset Bird for a while. At school, he was alright, but kept his distance from the other kids. From what you saw, anyway. He would pass by you in the hallway as if you didn't know each other. That was just fine with you. That year, the divorce of Cove's parents was finalized. You overheard your parents talking about saying Cove's dad got full custody. At first, you worried them at bad news. It had made Mr. Holden cry, apparently. Then you found out that Cove would keep living with his dad. He would only stay with his mom a few weeks out of the year. Cove cried too, for different reasons, you thought. It seemed like Cove and his dad might move again, but Mr. Holden decided to stay after all. Mom asked him about it once. He said he didn't want to uproot Cove's life a second time. Mr. Holden tried to get Cove to like Sunset Bird more. He kept encouraging his son to go out and see the place. Sometimes Mr. Holden volunteered you to spend time with Cove. You weren't sure how well it worked, though. Cove never talked to anyone about what happened with his parents and withdrew whenever it was brought up. It was hard for him, yet nobody knew how to help. Eventually, Cove stopped crying on his own. You couldn't understand what had changed. Though you never asked, you doubted he would tell you. After that, it felt like things had gone back to normal, except what was normal didn't stay the same. Years passed, and suddenly you were in middle school. You weren't a kid anymore, you were 13 years old. That officially made you a teen, even if your sister didn't agree. The toys and crayons that used to litter every free space in your room had been packed away somewhere, replaced with new hobbies. There were other changes too. Cove's cast got taken off. It was weird to see him without it initially. Underneath the pink plaster, it ended up being a long, thin scar that snaked across his forearm. Cove's cheeks flushed with shy pride when someone drew attention to it. He also went through a major growth spurt. He was the tallest student in his class for 2 years in a row. Cove will probably hold at that spot again next time. In class, people knew him more than just being tall. He stood out because of how well he did with school stuff overall. Over the years, he became more quiet and reserved. You didn't usually see him talking to other people. The only kid that came to visit the neighborhood when you were little, Shiloh, well, he was gone. He and his mom moved back to South because of her work, just 1 year after Cove came to Sunset Bird. It had been really upsetting when he left. Lizzie was inconsolable for weeks, but nobody talked about Shiloh anymore. It was a long time ago. He learned some heartbreaking things, became less sad the further away they were, even if it had never gotten any better. That was sad in its own way. Things at home were different too. You still lived in the same house and all that, but it wasn't how it was before. Ma dyed her hair purple, wanting something new, and liked it so much she kept dyeing it. You remember calling her Mommy as a kid, but something like that seemed awkward nowadays. You were much too old for the word. Lizzie felt too mature for her nickname too. She insisted on everyone calling her Elizabeth, so you did. Your mom soon gave her permission to go places other than the playground and shopping street, which she took advantage of. You rarely saw her around the old neighborhood. In fact, she had hardly spent time with you the way she did before. Elizabeth instead associated more and more with girls from school who were her own age. Maybe the difference between 13 and 15 was greater than the difference between 8 and 10. You started befriending new people yourself, like Derek Suarez. He didn't live in the neighborhood or go to the same school. What happened was his and Cove's dad struck up a business partnership a few months ago. Since then, Derek would pop up in the area now and then. It seemed Mr. Suarez was happy to let Derek tag along to his work if Derek had the time for it. Without a doubt, everyone and everything around you had changed in small and big ways. You had too. As time went by, though, it was easy to settle into this new normal. Then, before you knew it, school was over and summer vacation had come again. It was the first day of summer vacation. The sun was as hot as ever, but you were inside and away from the harsh rays. To be more specific, you were snuggled in bed, celebrating your time by sleeping in, wide awake, about to head out and enjoy your time off. She's 13. She doesn't need to be sleeping in. You don't need sleep when you're 13. You made sure to slather on a generous amount of sunscreen so you didn't get burnt. You were looking in the mirror, studying the clothes you'd thrown on when your bedroom door opened without warning. In the reflection, you saw Elizabeth raise an eyebrow. Have you been staring at yourself the whole morning? Could you knock next time? She ignored that, crossing her arms over her chest with a disgruntled expression. Clearly she didn't come in just to see you. Mom told me to tell you that Cove is at the door. Mr. Holden made him bring some happy summer gift over. Mom wants you to take it from him, say thanks or whatever. So come down already. Be right there. Elizabeth said nothing else and left, having done what was instructed of her. Now alone, you focused on the mirror once again. Reflection hardly fit in the frame. You're very tall. Reflection went over the whole length of the mirror. You're pretty tall. Reflection fit comfortably within the frame. Your average height. There's a lot of open real estate in the frame. You're pretty short. You had trouble getting your reflection to appear in the mounted mirror frame. You're very short. Or pretty tall. Cove tended to be the only person around who was even taller, at least among teens your own age. You liked your height. You weren't sure how to feel about it. You were kind of self-conscious. You weren't sure how to feel about it. Things kept changing. With the height you actually had, and what the impression of the height was based on your age, it was confusing. When you put the finishing touches on your outfit while ruminating on a situation carelessly as they had been, Elizabeth's words piqued your curiosity. You were a little bothered by the intrusion. Your plans for the special day were quickly being bogged down. Well, at least there was some kind of present involved. You left your room, taking an easy time down the stairs. Step 2. Second chance. You spotted Mom first, reclining on the couch. She held a magazine in her hands, which she was perusing through. Morning, Mom. She looked up at your greeting, a smile instantly appearing on her face.
Thanks.
Good morning, Devin. Thank you for coming down. Ma's at the door with Cove. He can't stay over today, unfortunately. Why don't you go and thank him before he leaves? You nodded and made your way to the front of the house. Just as she said, Ma was there making conversation. She must have heard you because she looked over her shoulder.
Oh.
Oh, look who finally made it. Morning, sleepyhead. Ma reached forward and you knew she was about to pat you on the head. She was taller than average for an adult woman, so you were still a little in her eyes despite being big for your own age. You let her do it. You happily let her do it. You told your body side to agit. You pushed your hand back and laughed, pushed your hand back and groaned. Ma could be so ridiculous, I thought, but that was okay. You're the last one down today, you know that. Life isn't a race. Morning, I was gonna stay in longer, so you're welcome. Sorry about the wait. Funny. I didn't think that excuse will work if you're late for anyone other than your own mother, though. With a small laugh, Ma stepped aside. Cove was just as you remembered, exactly how you came to know him to be. He leaned uncomfortably to the side of your doorway as the longer strands of his hair idly drifted with the breeze. His features were pinched in embarrassment as he shifted from one foot to another. He was holding what must have been the much-talked-about gift. First glance, you figured it must be a bouquet of flowers, then you gave it a real look. No, instead it was carefully cut fruit. It made a lot of sense. It was actually from Cove's dad. You had to suppress a laugh as it showing. You couldn't imagine many folks buying that sort of thing for their own personal enjoyment. The kind of arrangement was built for presentation, likely to impress whoever was inevitably going to receive it. It seemed no matter how long he lived here, Mr. Holden would keep going out of his way to be neighborly, and Cove would always be roped into participating. Cove audibly sighed. There was no way to tell if he would just relieved that he could leave soon, or if he wasn't happy to see you. Either was equally possible. Two of you had never clicked like your families wanted, not even close. Hey. Hi, nice to see you again. Yeah. That was all he said. Well, you supposed it could be considered comforting that some things don't ever change. It was already shaping up to be another long summer, with Cove's undesired presence filling the days. His awkwardness over the task started to creep back in, so Cove nudged the gift closer to you. He was ready to be relieved of it, and with that, the gift was accepted. Well, that's everything. He turned away from the gaze. It seemed like he'd rather be anywhere but here. Thanks. Could you tell your dad we like the gift? Yeah. Mr. Holden's behavior was different from any neighbor you'd ever had, though after 5 years you were used to his antics, since you'd made up your mind on what your opinion was. He was nice, he was sort of funny, he was pretty weird, you didn't like him, he was great, he's great, and kinda handsome to boot. You knew he wasn't completely perfect, but he always seemed to try hard for the sake of others. Your thoughts were quickly interrupted by a shout. There you are! You shared a confused look with Cove, as both of you stepped through the open door on the neighborhood street. It didn't take long to locate the source of the noise. You spotted Derek just a few yards down the road. He ran up to you. You were happy at the sight of him. You were confused at the sight of him. You were displeased at the sight of him. Didn't say we made friends with him. I'm not going to be rude. Derek was constantly a welcome guest in your neighborhood. It was a pleasant surprise whenever he showed up. After stopping a couple steps away, Derek hunched over to catch his breath. Then he looked up with a wide grin. Hey, guy and gal. Oh my god, he's so small. I was just at your house, Cove, but no one was there. I'm glad you didn't go too far. Derek turned to you like he was going to say more, but then his eyes widened and gasped. What's that? He followed his gaze unsure, then realized what he meant. You're still holding Mr. Holden's gift. This is kind of like a bouquet of flowers, but made out of fruit. Nice. Can I have some? Maybe you can have some later. Derek grew more excited by your words bouncing on the balls of his feet. Awesome. Then he nodded his head as if to clear it. Anyway, that's right. I came here because I need to say something big. He paused, possibly for effect. There's some other kid here in Sunset Bird. Cove was as surprised as you were by the news. Such a reaction made sense. No one around your age had moved here since Cove did 5 years ago. Were they with their family? Maybe they were cutting through. No, the new kid was all by himself, just walking. Did you talk to him? Nope, I came to report the sighting right away. The kid had green hair, glasses, was pretty small, and seemed really upset about something. I hope he didn't leave. You blinked, slowly looked over your longtime neighbor. That sounds a lot like you, Cove, when you first got here anyway. Oh yeah, I guess that was me back then. Derek snickered good-naturedly. I can see that really well now that you say so. But what do you say? Let's go find Cove's lookalike. Y'all should meet him. I'll do it. Sure, I want to see who this person is. Derek grinned as he pointed down the street the way he came. Last I saw him, the mystery visitor was going this direction. Nothing else needed to be said. The three of you were off, with Derek leading the way. Derek brought you to the beach, and as a trio, you made your way down the shore to the old playground. You walked the familiar path in a comfortable silence. When you were almost there, you spotted the kid in question. His bright colors almost shined like a beacon beneath the rays of sun. He scuffled around, kicking the sand as he paced. It was true, he certainly seemed upset, but you didn't think he was sad like you had originally pictured. No, his erratic movements and scratched up expression, he came off angry. Started to have doubts about this expedition. Maybe it'd be better if you left him alone and let him sort himself out. You shared a look with Cove. He was equally reluctant to start up a conversation. Derek didn't feel the same. He waved wildly, calling out to the boy. Hey, guy, over here. Oh my goodness, he's got a bowl cut. The kid whipped around, an impressive scowl carving deeper into his face. His eyes were tired, but strong hostile energy still radiated from him. What is it? What do you want? The sharp tone made Derek flinch. He shifted on his feet. What's your name? Jeremy. Was that it? No. No, I'm Derek. This is Devin and Cove. We were just walking around and saw you. We wanted to say hi. This is another character from XOXO Droplets. Fucking angry Jeremy with a bowl cut. God, he's so small and angry. He's small and angry in XOXO Droplets too, just older. He probably didn't get any taller from here. No, I'm Derek. That's Devin and Cove. We were just walking around and saw you. We wanted to say hi. There aren't a lot of kids our age in the neighborhood. Yeah, so, you know, it seemed cool to see someone else here. Strangely, Jeremy grew furious by your response. If steam could erupt from person's ears, it would have happened then. They did bring me somewhere stupid. Of course, I knew it. What? My parents. Parents. They're the ones who brought me. I didn't walk to this town. Can you not figure that out on your own? Right. My dad brings me to Sunset Bird, too, when he has to come to work and all that stuff. It's not bad. That earned him a glare from Jeremy. Derek winced beneath it, glancing away. It was a struggle to remain friendly with this Jeremy guy. I mean, I wouldn't want to come here for a real vacation probably either. That's an understatement. This doesn't count as a vacation. It's a waste of time, a chore. My parents' family is nearby, and we just had to come see them. Ugh. If they're your parents' family, doesn't that make them your family too? I guess. That's a pretty good reason to come by. Did you want to go somewhere else? No. Jeremy crossed his arms with a huff. He turned away. They should have gone by themselves since they cared so much and left me home, but I'm not allowed to be by myself. Pfft. It makes no sense. They're the ones who don't know how to do anything, and I'm the kid. So the whole, hook of XOXO Droplets is that, all of the allies are fucking assholes. So, sorry, it must suck being forced to something you don't wanna. As if that does anything. You turned to Cove, lowering your voice. Two of you aren't that similar after all. Jeremy must have good hearing, though, because he caught the private exchange and scoffed. Of course we're not similar. My eyebrows aren't stupid. I mean, they're pretty small. They're pretty, they might not be wiggly, but they're little teeny tiny eyebrows. Thin. Cove's cheek flushed crimson at the insult. You couldn't be sure if it was out of embarrassment or anger. Maybe both. Come on. How can you say that when you've got a bowl cut? Let's just insult him. Yep, it's embarrassing and awful, but my parents made me. I won't have to have it when I'm older. I don't know what he's gonna do with those things, except maybe shave them off. He probably should. I bet he'd look less dumb with no eyebrows. Can I fight him? I'm gonna fight the kid. With your fist balled, you made a quick step forward. Because when I started things, you're ready to end them. You made it clear the words wouldn't work, leaving you to resort to action. You weren't sure what to do, but you couldn't let this stand. Derek and Cove jumped in to stop you before you reached him. They each grabbed you by the arm, stood firmly, and simply stumbled backwards. You practically fell over. If that's all you can do about what I'm saying, just prove me I'm right, you're brainless. You were annoyed the other two were against you on this and got in the way, though your reaction been able to get was still worth it. Wow, what's wrong with you? Instead of taking offense, Jeremy only parroted Derek's words in an easy voice.
What is wrong with you?
Wah, wah. This is dumb. Jeremy stuck his tongue out and skulked away, throwing more sand everywhere as he went. You watched him go, hunched over until he became a speck in your vision. Silence reigned in his wake. The three of you tried to process what just happened. I can't believe it. What a mean kid. Derek wasn't kidding, but the sound of those earlier complaints, the new boy Jeremy was going to be in the area for at least a little while this summer. Derek sighed in dismay, plopping onto the ground. You followed, and Cove did too shortly after. There wasn't much else to do. This sucks. I was hoping we could meet someone fun, hang out maybe. He shook his head. After a moment, he slowly turned to you with a hopeful expression. But you know what could really improve the day? What? He didn't respond. Instead, he used a hand to point right at the fruit arrangement that you were still holding. You completely forgot about during the mini drama that unfolded. You had gotten used to the weight. I almost attacked a kid while holding an edible arrangement. That's pretty poggers. Glancing over to Cove, you noticed he was eyeing the fruit. He must want some too. You know what? Why not? I don't know if my moms are gonna be a fan of that, but let's fucking eat. You only live once. Derek pricked him immediately at your words. He reached out for a skewer, hesitating slightly once he was inches away. Sure? Are you sure? You nodded with an eager grin. He plucked out a prime row of fruits. Cove grabbed one for himself after him. Only you were without a skewer of your own. Take a pineapple skewer, grape skewer, strawberry skewer, melon skewer. Let's do strawberries. The strawberry was a bright red and beckoning to you. It was so obvious first choice. Derek ate a pineapple skewer enthusiastically, finishing it within moments. This is amazing. Cove continued munching on his, making a small noise with his mouthful. Hey, you two remember the land before time? The fruit thing makes me think of it. The dinosaurs all had those leaves that were shaped like stars. Tree stars. I almost called them star fruits. Yeah, chomping leaves looked so delicious when they did it. And there was that scene with the pretty trees and all the dinosaurs came in and picked everything off them till there was nothing. That's us right now. Awesome. I love that movie. I've never seen it. I didn't like that one. That movie's for kids. Eating leaves looks good. Should I worry about you? Do things taste better when they're shaped like stars? He snickered. Not everything, but it probably helps. The three of you continued like this for the next few minutes. Eventually, the display was barren. It looked weird when devoid of fruit. Hey, we weren't supposed to eat all of it. It did help you feel better. Eating it hadn't really made you feel any better. Eating it did make me feel better. Derek was right. It was so good. You were already brightening up from the earlier drama. Cove stood up unannounced, dusting off sand from his clothes with one hand. You saw a flash of his scar on the inside of his arm as he did. I'm gonna go. Okay, bye, dude. See you, Cove. He watched as he walked off towards some other place that wasn't here, his gait unhurried. You weren't annoyed or upset by his sudden exit. It was how Cove was, only sticking around as long as he saw fit. Derek let out a deep breath and leaned back on his arms. His head rolled until his gaze met yours. So, are you ready for summer break? Yeah, a cool on you. Wish I could stay the same. It feels like there's a lot to plan for. Before he could say anything else, the light atmosphere was shattered. Hey, Devin! You glanced over your shoulder to see your sister. She strode closer and closer, appearing none too pleased. I've been looking all over for you. Ma said you and Cove ran off with a thing Mr. Holden bought for us. She leered over you and arms folded. So, where is it? Well, it's gone. What do you mean it's gone? You moved aside to face her completely, zeroed in on the bouquet in your hands, which is now populated exclusively with skewers dripping in juice and tiny flecks of leftover fruit pieces. Her mouth dropped open and the tone of her voice rose. Seriously, Devin? What were you thinking? It was supposed to be for all of us at home. Get over it. Well, the morning's been kind of a disaster. Elizabeth narrowed her eyes, not at all placated. No, I think I hear the mean kid coming back. We better get out of here. Elizabeth blinked confused and looked around. What kid? I don't see anyone. Derek didn't bother explaining. He just launched to his feet and ran off. He turned to watch Elizabeth. She stared back, brow raised. Fuck it, I'm running. Without a word, you two got to your feet and bolted down the beach. Unimpressed, Elizabeth rolled her eyes. You're so immature. She shook her head as she walked towards the house, not bothering whatsoever to follow. Meanwhile, you made it back to the shoreline with Derek. Derek pumped his fist, grinning in triumph. We escaped and shall live to see another day. Exactly, but we should keep moving. Yeah, for now at least. Victory! My mom's gonna be so mad when Elizabeth tells this story. Oh well. You chuckled together, walking further down the beach side by side. You definitely wanted to stay outside a little while longer. Later that night, you found yourself seated near the kitchen counter. You got in a bit of scolding from Moms for not saving any of Mr. Holden's gift for Elizabeth, but you didn't get any real punishment for it. Instead, while you were out with the boys, Elizabeth returned home to share the news. The three of them went to get dessert on their own. It was declared even by your parents when everyone got back and the event was settled. That was a while ago now. Your fingers drummed on the surface as you waited, your gaze trained on the phone. You were waiting on a call tonight, specifically from your cousin Leandra. You didn't want to miss it accidentally. Your aunt, uncle, and Lee used to live many hours away. Your families only saw each other a few times a year for big occasions. A while back, though, they'd moved and were closer to you than ever before, and you now hung out regularly. With school being out, you're positive she's going to want to come over a lot. The two of you were the same age and got along well. She used to be really fond of Lizzie, Elizabeth, too, but now that your sister had become allergic to interacting with her own family, it tended to just be you and Lee who spent time together. She was your only friend who was a girl. Being family helped make you close, but you had a lot of girlfriends. She was my only friend who was a girl. You weren't all that close with the other girls your age, but you had plenty of other friends. But you didn't really have a lot of other friends either. Ma always said that the quality is more important than quantity, and Elizabeth bemoaned your small social circle. You weren't sure how friendship quality was judged, but nevertheless, you thought with what you had with Lee was good. Then the shrill ringtone announced an incoming call. You jumped before grabbing the receiver and pressing it to your ear. Lee, finally! Works residence, Devin speaking. Hello?
Hi!
Oh my god, she's cute. Hi, Devin, it's Lee. I'm glad it's you. For a second there, I thought it might be one of Elizabeth's friends. There was static on the end as if Lee was shifting wherever she was. So can you believe school's actually over? I thought it'd never be done. Now we don't have to do any of that boring stuff and we get to hang out whenever we want. Speaking of hanging out, Lee, can you wait a second? Let me head to my room.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You got up from your seat at the counter. Luckily, the phone was wireless, so you didn't have to worry about the cords tying you down. Your mom set a rule about not moving the phone unless a call was in progress, which is why you've been sat by its cradle waiting for Lee to call. Your mom's could be really unfair. You thought that made sense. You didn't like it, but it had to be that way. You weren't the only person here. If anyone could take the phone anywhere at any time, it'd be an even bigger hassle. You could easily imagine a receiver having a new forever home in Elizabeth's locked room. But now that Lee had called, it was okay for you to go upstairs to your bedroom and talk to her. You made your way up the stairs, smiling. After you'd arrived, you shut the bedroom door firmly behind you. You took a seat on your bed. All right, I'm here. Cool. Hey, did you know the girl down the street from me has her own phone now? A cell phone. She doesn't have to wait for someone else to stop using it or anything. Wow, really? The thought of someone having a phone that was all their own seemed unbelievable to you. Right, I wish I had one too, but my parents said I couldn't get my own phone until I'm more grown up. I wish they'd changed their mind. We could call each other every single day and no one would be able to stop us. How great would that be? Really great. But wouldn't I still be using a home phone? My moms would be able to stop us if they wanted. Lee laughed. You didn't put a damper on her imagination. Oh, then you have your own phone too. That works. She sighed dramatically. I bet I'm not even going to get one until I'm all the way in college. Squeezing the phone between your shoulder and ear, you puffed up your pillows and made yourself more comfy. It was strange to think of a time when normal school would be over and you'd have to choose whether or not to go to a college. School was such a big part of your life right now. Studying didn't come easily to you, though you tried hard. You worked about as hard as most people and got pretty average results as well. You guessed that was reasonable enough. You felt a lot of pressure to get higher grades than you did last year. You hoped to do just as well this year, but it wouldn't be a big deal if you dropped some. You were confident your grades would remain great. You had no plans on getting excellent scores this time around. It just wasn't something all that important to you. Yeah, you tried to sound engaged, but your mind had decided to go back to school despite the season. Lee knew you too well to be fooled. You sound so spacey. What's up? Just thinking about school. Lee groaned. Think about how we don't have to think about it because it's summer, because that's what I'm doing. I'm looking forward to going back. Let's make a petition for more vacation time. It's so awful. I hate going. Come on. It's too scary not to think about it. No matter how much you wanted to enjoy your free time, the creeping dread of knowing that it would come to an end was always there beside you. I get what you mean. Though, I guess school isn't all the way bad. You can do some things there. You can just do more when school's out. Learning new things can be cool. Gym is pretty great, though. It's the easiest way to hang out with people not in the neighborhood. The cafeteria lunches at my school can be better than they had any right to be. There's nothing good about my school. Learning new things can be cool. I just wish everyone did okay with how they taught the things, not just some people. Me too. Gym is pretty great, though. There was all sorts of fun sports stuff during gym. Oh yeah, it can be fun sometimes. That was all. That's pretty much everything that's good about school. Okay, point taken. Now, I decree the topic of school is officially closed. You have to talk about the summer first before we start plotting the rest of our lives. I've got some plans already. Ooh, tell me. I'm gonna visit my cousins. You chuckled, of course. What's something you want to do? The first thing that comes to your head. I'll spend time with people. I've got some new art supplies, reading. I'm gonna catch up on movies and TV. Probably I'll spend time at the beach. I don't want to do anything at all. It's vacation. I can't wait to try them out. I can't wait to see what you make. You lean back in your bed, settling in as you continued chatting with your friend. Even though it hadn't been long since you last saw her, you'd be seeing her soon. You found plenty to talk about. Run the events of the day. You sat up straighter. I was with Cove and Derek today. We met a new kid, like at your neighborhood. His parents are visiting family, so it sounds like he'll be around for a little while. I don't know how long. What was he like? Mean. He kept snapping when we all were trying to do was talk to him. He just kept being rude to everyone, but especially Cove. I don't think I want to meet him. I tried to beat him up, and the boy stopped me. You want a boy to stay away before even meeting him? That's an unexpected twist. Your cousin was pretty popular with the boys who knew her. She seemed happy enough to have them around until they started to annoy her. Who are you to talk? Cove and Derek are always around. They're both boys, you know. That's true. It's not the same. They're not always around. I'm not the one who invites them. They show up on their own. Lee laughed at your response, deeply amused. Even though she couldn't see, you shook your head at her, grinning to yourself. There was a stomping noise approaching your room, heralding the arrival of your irritated older sister. She flung the door open, a frown etched on her face. How long are you gonna hog the phone? Glancing at your watch, you realized your quick call had gone on much longer than anticipated. Elizabeth held out her hand, the other one launched on her hip. She noticed the realization on your face. Time's up! With a sigh, you said your goodbyes to Lee. Lee, I have to go now. Okay, see you soon. Tell Elizabeth and your moms I said hi too. You barely pressed the end call button when Elizabeth whisked the handset away from your fingers and began dialing someone new as she strode out of the room. Your mom's voice called from downstairs. Hey, has anyone seen the phone? I'm using it! With that, she shut your door behind you. Silence was left in the wake. That was the one way to end your first day of summer break. Breakfast was eaten in peace and alone. Your moms were both out by the time you got up. They had left you a serving of food from the breakfast they had made. Hash browns, an omelet, fruit salad, and there were a few sausage links. Took a little bit of everything, passed on some parts because they weren't the things you liked. Took a little bit of everything. It was tasty. You appreciate there's variety in the meals your mom's made. The day lazily drifted by. You pulled open the fridge again, lingering in the frosty air for a moment or two before grabbing a bottle of ice-cold water and taking a long drink. It was perfect balmy summer afternoon. You decided to head outdoors and find something to do. You hadn't decided that something was just yet, but you were sure something would pop up to occupy your time. You stepped out the front door and onto the street, deciding which way to go first when a voice caught your attention. Hi, Devin. Confused, you looked over to see an unrecognizable woman was waving at you, a friendly smile plastered on her face. You racked your memory from when you might have seen her before, but nothing came to mind. Not your school, or from the country club your moms took you to. You had absolutely no idea who the woman was. Across the road towards you, and you were a little unsure whether you should stay put or go back into the house and lock the door. Whoops, I'm sorry. Was that presumptuous? I've heard about you, but you have no idea who I am, do you? She shook her head. Is this Cove's mom? You shook your head, and she removed her sunglasses to reveal sparkly ocean blue eyes. All of a sudden, she seemed to be a little bit more familiar. My son lives here, and my ex too. Damn, Cove's got a hot mom. With a bent smile, she lifted a hand to point at the condo across the street from her own house. She was Cove's mom. You didn't know why you hadn't realized it sooner, now that you've gotten a good look at her. She seemed nice, she seemed sort of strange, she looked really young. It made sense that she was Cove's mom. She felt so different to Cove. She was super pretty. This beautiful lady was Cove's mother? Wow. She extended a hand again, this time for you to take, and you studied the manicured fingers in front of your face, an assortment of bracelets that dangle from her wrist. I'm Kira Priest. You can call me Kira. You shook her hand. You reached out and took her hand. She shook yours firmly, grinning wide. I'm Devin, but you already know that? That I do. Cove's mentioned you to me before. It's nice to officially meet you, Devin. He did? Cove and I aren't really friends. I've also heard that. Maybe that will change one day. What has Cove said about me? What are you doing here? Nice to meet you too. She smiled at you fondly, her eyes crinkling at the corners. The sound of the door opening and closing caught both your attentions, and you turned toward the sound. It was to find Cove exiting his house, his eyes skimming the ground. Considering just how tall he'd grown, you were kind of figured his mom also would be tall, but she was much more on the short side, for an adult anyway. Cove's height must have come from his father. There you are. I thought you were going to keep me standing out here all day. You said nothing as Cove walked over the two of you. When he finally looked up, he noticed you were there and raised his eyebrows curiously. You couldn't quite tell his expression that crossed his face was confusion or relief. Cove and I are heading into town to grab something to eat while the snore is at work. Kira beamed at Cove and ruffled his hair, which only seemed to upset him more. You assumed the snorer she was talking about was Mr. Holden. Hey, you should come with us, Devin. I'd love to get to know you better. Yeah, you should come. You were such taken aback by Cove's agreement, you hadn't imagined being stuck with him and suddenly appearing mom for the afternoon, especially now if he's going to be gloomy the whole time. Of course we'll run it by your parents first, responsibility and all that. It'll give me an excuse to meet them, which I need to do at some point. It's important to be neighborly if I'm going to be roosting on the street for the time being. Any woozies, let's go. I think I was supposed to say any whoosies, but I read as any woozies. Kira walked ahead towards your house, and you hung back with Cove, who crinkled his nose as you watched her. I'm sorry about her, but I really do want you to come. I don't want it to be just the two of us, not right now. I didn't know your mom was coming over. Don't you usually go where she is? Yeah, she's gonna be staying with us for the summer. She just got here this morning. I feel like that would be awkward. I don't have separated parents, so I don't know exactly what it's like, but I feel like it would be awkward to have your 5 years divorced parents living together again for the summer. As a, like, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, however old Cove's supposed to be. His face scrunched up more. You nodded in understanding. Cove had been through a lot with both his parents the past few years, and it seemed like it was still taking some time to adjust. The two of you headed over to where Cove's mom had just knocked on your door and stood behind her. Mom answered the door after a minute, her eyebrows lifting in surprise at the group she had just found in front of her. Realized that, like you, she would have no idea it was Cove's mom who was hanging out with you. However, after blinking at the woman a couple times and looking between her and Cove, the realization seemed to strike her. Hello there, I'm Pamela. I see you've met my kid, Devin. I'm guessing you've already known Cove for a while. Kira laughed, and you and Cove exchanged looks at your parents' weird sense of humor. I'm Kira Priest, Cove's mom. It's so nice to meet you. Head of purple-brown hair caught your eye as Ma popped up behind Mom, squeezing herself in behind her. We have company. I was wondering what all the commotion was. She grinned exactly like Kira. The two of them introduced themselves and shook hands. Hi, Devin, Cove. Cove smiled at Ma shyly, and she gestured a hand towards the living room. There's no use hanging around the doorway. Why don't you come in? I'd love to, but I promised to take my son out to eat. I wouldn't want to hold you up with a surprise visit. Cove grimaced and held back a groan. He likely took offense at how she didn't want to put them out with a surprise visit, but not him, apparently. Oh, I understand. You're welcome to stop by any time. I'll take you up in the offer when I can. Count on it. Would you mind too much if Devin went with Cove and I? My treat. I won't be driving. Just a quick walk down the road. Sure, that sounds nice. I hope you all have fun. Your mom gave your moms a look, and they smiled at you fondly. You were happy they were letting you go. It seemed like Cove needed the support, and you were starting to feel pretty hungry anyway. Marvelous. Expect us to be out in an hour or two. We look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Your parents waved goodbye to the three of you as you backed up onto the street, the sound of the front door closing behind you. I'm pretty positive I saw some restaurants when I was in the taxi not too far from here. Yeah, it's a tourist town, isn't it? There's a lot of them around. Kira put her hands on her hips and smiled at her son. Well, you sound like the area expert. Do you have any recommendations for a place nearby? Not really. Kira pounded at him a little and turned to you instead. What about you, Devin? Want to point me in the right direction? You shrugged. Not really. Sure, I have a couple of favorites. You've been a lot of places in town. There are a couple of stops from the rest. There's a Chinese restaurant that me and my family go to all the time. It's my mom's favorite. Just a tropical themed place that tries to be all sorts of fancy. Both sound like a treat. I'll leave it up to you to pick for us since Cove is going through a phase over here. He huffed at her and turned his face away. Tropical, instant Cove contributing decision. You insisted. Kira decided. Let's go to the Chinese restaurant. Thank you, Devin. Will you show us the way? You nodded, taking the lead of your little group as Cove and his mom followed behind you. Together, the three of you left the neighborhood behind. The walk was about 15 minutes, and along the way, Kira asked a lot of questions about the area. Cove was quiet most of the time, so you ended up answering her instead. Kira explained that she lived in a large city, but she loved how peaceful and relaxing everything seemed in Sunset Bird. The restaurant was busy as usual, but luckily you were shown right to a small table. Kira lowered herself into the chair while Cove picked the one diagonal to her, not facing her or to her side. It was awkward. Let's see. To start, what would you all like to drink? I'll get an orange soda. Noted. Devin? Which flavor? Let's get matching. Sure. Kira placed an order for your drinks, getting a black hot coffee for herself, and it didn't take long before they were brought to the table and set in front of you. Took a long sip of your drink and looked around the restaurant. Your small group checked over the menus, and you decided to order your usual thing. You had been to this restaurant many times, so you knew what was good and what wasn't already. Kira and Cove didn't need any encouragement for this. They were totally focused on the information in front of them. Soon the meals, too, were ordered. I should maybe save. I haven't saved since I've been doing this episode. Soon the meals, too, were ordered and the menus taken away. You glanced at the table service, waiting to figure out what to say. Cove awkwardly sunk back further into his seat and crossed his arms, all while blatantly avoiding eye contact. The side wall must be real interesting to him right now. His sour feelings today were unignorable. Instead of asking more open questions he'd brush off, Kira had mercy on her son and instead put her focus towards you. So, Devin, what's a few things you're into? There's gotta be something you do for... Is my phone gonna shut up? There's gotta be something you do for fun, especially now that you're not buried in school assignments. I like to read, I like to watch, games are fun to play, I like to hang out with people, I like to go to the beach, I'm into sports, spend time on art. Sculpting's fun. I love sculpting. I learned how to make clay sculptures at school. I've loved doing it ever since. And games are fun. I like to play video games. I don't know much about them. Maybe you can show me sometime. And I like to read manga. I haven't heard of that style, but I'm sure it's very good. And novels. Me too. Nothing beats curling up with a good book. And comic books. Oh, just like Cove's daddy back in the day. And non-fiction books. I bet you know about a lot of things then. And magazines. How interesting. I think we get along. And poetry. Sophisticated beyond for your years, I see. And fashion. I love makeup. Right? It's so fun to experiment with looks. And I love shoes. I'm trying to get more, but Mom thinks I have enough already. Can a person ever really have too many shoes? And I love clothes. Understandable. I just love the way fashion lets you express yourself no matter who you are. And I go to the beach and look for seashells. I keep the best ones I find for my collection. I'm sure it's an incredible collection. And I go surfing. Oh, do you and Cove surf together? Kira looked at Cove expectantly, mumbled something non-committally and looked away again. Walk along the shore. It's a nice way to relax. Be able to spend some time on the shore while I'm here myself. And I build sandcastles. And I swim. You must be a strong swimmer since you live so close to the ocean. I find the water a little scary, but I still like to dip my toes in sometimes. And I like music. I like to listen to a lot of it. An MP3 player at home. My mom helped me put some music on. I've seen some concerts. Awesome. And you didn't say anything else. Thanks. I'm happy to learn more about you. There's so much I hadn't heard. Cove leaves the details out. So what exactly did Cove say about me? Kira laughed, holding a hand in front of her mouth. I can't tell you that. I didn't come all this way to embarrass my son too much. Kids are delicate at this age. She laughed again, and you glanced at Cove to see his reaction. He cringed, looking very much like he would rather be anywhere but here. Hoping it would clear some of the tension in the air, you decided to ask Kira a few questions of your own. Cove hadn't told you much about her, and you were curious to know more about this woman who was such a big part of his life. What exactly do you do for work? I'm a travel writer for magazines and things. I keep people in the loop on what's worth seeing. It's good work. Wow. What do you like to do? Where do you live normally? Why did you and Mr. Holt get divorced? Where do you live normally? Nevada? Have you ever been there? You shook your head. It's a beautiful place. Check it out if you can. What do you like to do? Spend a lot of time with my little boy, of course, and traveling. A real shock, huh? You didn't seem to bother. It didn't seem to bother. The conversation dropped off. Cove sipped his soda angrily, slurping up the remaining drink with furrowed brows. He looked ready to run straight out of the restaurant. You wondered he was annoyed that you were spending the time talking to his mom, but he hadn't seemed to want to talk to her at all. Made a silly face at him. You smiled at him and gave him a sympathetic look. You flicked a straw wrapper at him. You left him alone. Cove eventually noticed you watching him. He gave you a deadpan look. You'd only been trying to be social. You two seem really cute together. Cove covered his face in his hands and leaned back in his seat. Ugh, Mom, why would you say that? Thanks, we are cute. Very. Your meal was delivered shortly after that, and everything was so delicious, even Cove enjoyed his food. Alright, now we're all full and content. Can you please explain why you've had a bug up your butt all day? Cove's face instantly returned to a scrunched form. Seriously, baby, what did Mom do to make you this mad? I haven't even been around a full day yet. He gripped the edge of the table, refusing to make eye contact. The words he spoke were barely audible over the din of the restaurant. You could have told me. She leaned forward, not to miss anything else, eyebrows raised. Told you what? He finally seemed to find his voice and spoke the thoughts that had been on his mind. That I wasn't going to visit you this year. That you were going to be coming instead. Didn't you invite me? You wanted me here with you? Cove's eyes began to shake. His frustration ebbed. I don't want you to be around. I do want you to be around, but I didn't know it'd be like this. This is not the same, and nobody said anything. I see. Her expression grew tense. She threaded her fingers together and placed her hands in front of her on the table. We've both been gifted another Clifford surprise. Referring to that as the Clifford surprise almost caused both you and Cove to crack a smile. You had no idea his name wasn't just Cliff. Over 5 years, nobody had ever called him Clifford until now. She smoothed her hair out, not letting go her stern look. The more things change, the more they stay the same. They let out identical sighs, but smiled weakly at one another afterwards. I can go home, Cove. We can still set up a normal trip to my place before the summer ends. Cove's lips tightly closed together. He seriously pondered the question. I think I do want you to stay. I miss it when you're not there. My heart. She reached across the gap, grabbed his face, and planted a kiss on his cheek. Cove tried to wiggle away. Mom, stop. I'm sorry. Sweet young men need to be smooched by their parents. If I don't, they'll take away my mom license. Kira was completely enthused by Cove's admission, though a tone of seriousness did return to her voice when the conversation continued. You want to talk to your dad, too? No. Cove had snapped the word instantly, but reeled his annoyance back just as quickly. Maybe later, not today. I understand. We can shelve it. Thanks, Mom. Thank you for talking to me, little mister. She grinned affectionately at him before turning your way. And thank you, Devin. Huh? What did I do? It's easy to act like a baby with your mom. It's harder to keep that up with your neighbor watching everything. Mom. She just ruffled his hair with the left, then moved her hand down to tap the end of his nose. And that was how the issue was resolved, at least between Cove and his mom. When the three of you left the restaurant, Kira had paid the bill. You walked back to your neighborhood slowly. You had eaten so much by that time you were beginning to feel sleepy. It didn't help that the lunch had happened late and the sun was already beginning to descend from the sky. But eventually, you reached your street. Someone was there to greet your group upon arrival. His hair so long. Welcome back, family, and Devin, too. Cliff. Dad. The two walked past him into the condo without sparing another word. Despite the summer heat, the shoulders were cold. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He rubbed the back of his neck with a crooked smile, but his eyes were soft as he looked on after them. He's so much like his mom, don't you think? You gave a vague nod, not sure what he was expecting you to do. He nodded back far more energetically. Okay, have a nice night, Devin. You too, Mr. Holden. With that, Cove's dad disappeared to join the others inside. It was your turn to go home now. Summer hadn't started off at all the way you imagined it would have, though it turned out to set the tone well. Having Kira in your neighborhood was a new experience for not only you and Cove, but also both your families, and a dull moment was rarely had. Alright, I wasn't expecting that to be quite that long, so we are going to end this episode here. I've been recording for like an hour, almost an hour and a half. So hopefully I can trim this down to a reasonable length, but we'll see. You know, maybe it's a long episode. But thank you guys so much for watching, and you know, you can follow me on my other socials in the description, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye!